You'll come out here one day, they'll look great, come out here the next day, and they've gone completely flat. They've just melted in the sun. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having an awesome day. It is Tuesday, May 20th here in South Georgia, and it's starting to get a little toasty around here, but we're just getting started with the summer heat. So in today's video, we're going to talk about some different ways that the intense summer heat, especially in a climate like ours, can wreck your vegetable garden. And I'm going to give specific examples of how the summer heat affects certain veggies. And I know this may come across as kind of a depressing video because I'm telling you all the bad things that are going to happen to your plants once it gets really hot. But let's kind of look at this as more of a what to expect kind of thing so you can be prepared. And so this is going to be kind of a two-part video series. On the next video, we're going to talk about some things that will thrive in the summer heat versus the things we're talking about today, which are probably not going to do that well. So let's jump right into our list. And number one, let's talk about everybody's favorite vegetable, tomatoes. So while these tomatoes may look all lush and beautiful right now, nice and dark green and really starting to load up with fruits there, this won't always be the case. Because when we start seeing daytime temperatures in the high 90s and nighttime temperatures in, say, the high 70s, maybe even low 80s, that's when we know our tomatoes are in trouble. And you know it's bad when you can break a sweat just walking outside at night to move a water hose or feed the cats. When it's hot, even at night, you know those tomatoes are in trouble. So when we start seeing those kind of temperatures, that's when those tomatoes will usually stop setting fruits. Now, there are certain heat set varieties out there that do a little bit better as things get warmer, but when it gets so hot, most all of them are really not going to set any fruits for you. Another issue that we have a lot down here is that viruses become even more prevalent, and that's because insects are super active when it's really hot outside, and the more active insects we have flying around or hopping around, that's more ways that viruses can be vectored to our plants. So that's how our plants usually get viruses. Insect eats a plant with a virus and then nibbles on your tomato plant, boom, there goes the virus transmission. And in addition to that, even if our tomato plants don't have any viruses, they'll just naturally start to crumble once temperatures get in the high 90s. Those leaves will start to fold up during the day. Those plants are just super stressed, and over time that takes a toll on those plants. Now, there are a few things you can do to mitigate this. The healthier the tomato plant, the more fertile your soil is, the better it's going to be able to withstand a little bit of heat stress. But there's only so much you can do as far as fertility and when it gets super hot outside. And you can also use shade cloth to help you out. Now, I have had minimal success using shade cloth to really extend my tomato growing season down here, but I know a lot of people swear it works for them, so it's worth a try. So that's how the heat can do a number on your tomatoes. Moving along on our list, number two, and we'll group these two together. Let's talk about squash and cucumbers. Now, our squash and cucumbers look pretty dang good right now because it's early in the season, hasn't gotten super hot yet. The bug pressure hasn't escalated really bad yet, and it's been pretty dry around here lately, which is good for growing squash and cucumbers. Because when you couple intense summer temperatures and frequent rain together, that's when the mildew can really jump on your plants in a hurry and really cripple them. A lot easier to grow squash and cucumbers, assuming you've got good irrigation, in a dry period than it is a wet, hot period. And when that mildew sets in, yes, we can spray fungicides to slow it down a little bit. But if you're getting those frequent rains and it's really hot outside, not a whole lot you can do. Another issue we have when it gets really hot, the squash bugs just become unbearable. So right now we're starting to see a few squash bugs, not a ton of them. just a few, and we can go through there and find those and squish them with our hands, kind of manually control them, even control them by spraying a little bit. But once things get really hot, those things, their reproduction cycle just shortens, and you've got them everywhere, so many that you really can't control. So the squash bugs will multiply faster than we can keep up with them. Another pest issue we have as things get hotter on the squash and cucumbers are pickle worms. Now, much like the squash bugs, the pickle worms, we'll get a few of them right now, but they're pretty easy to manage with some BT or spinosad. As things get hotter though, they become more and more prevalent, and you can spray all you want, but you're still going to have holes in your cucumbers and squash because of those pesky pickle worms. And if you're like me, that's when you throw in the towel on the squash and cucumbers. You fight them as long as you can, but at some point, like old Forrest Gump said, there just ain't enough rocks. So you just throw in the towel and say, I don't need to be growing squash and cucumbers right now because I can't keep the bugs off of them. Number 3 on our list, let's talk about how the intense summer heat can affect sweet corn. Now, we covered this a good bit on our last video, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail here, but as things get hotter, that corn earworm pressure escalates, and it's really hard to fight the earworms even with spraying. Now, the commercial guys around here, they'll grow sweet corn, you know, plant it 3 or 4 times all throughout the warm growing season, but they're growing that BT corn. It's got the BT inside the plants, and they don't really have to worry about the worms. But for a backyard gardener that's not growing GMO corn, at some point those worms kind of become too pesky to fight, and you grow some corn in the dead middle heat of summer down here, and you'll have some worm damage. Almost every single ear will have a little bit of worm damage. Another issue with growing summer corn down here, those old pesky heat units get to you a little bit, so that corn matures so much faster because those heat units are ramped up. That means it's even more crucial to give it the water and fertilizer when it needs it, so timing is tricky on that. You got to be really on top of your game, or else you'll end up with some stunted corn plants and some stunted ears. Now, I don't really have any beans growing out here right now, but I've grown plenty of beans in the past to tell you that when temperatures get consistently in, say, the mid to high 90s, those beans will start dropping blooms. The plants may still look okay, but they'll start dropping those blooms and won't be producing any more beans for you. Now, pole beans, which typically have a longer lifespan than bush beans, sometimes those pole bean plants will live through the summer. They might not produce any beans during the middle of the summer, but the plants will stay alive, and then once things cool down a little bit in fall, they'll start producing again. I have had that happen before. I have also seen years where the plants just die in the middle of summer. So sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. Now, typically pole beans are going to drop blooms faster than bush beans will, so that's something to consider. But bush beans will tend to have a lot of rust issues and stuff when it gets really hot outside, and that's what prohibits a lot of bush bean growth down here in the middle of summer. And then number 5 on our list, let's talk about watermelons. So when it gets really hot outside, watermelons sitting in one of your garden plots can be like a ticking time bomb. So as that summer heat really intensifies, kind of makes that watermelon skin a little soft. It's not as tough as it is when temperatures are still moderate outside. And if you're not getting any rain and you're just irrigating with drip irrigation, really controlling things, you might not have any issues. But if it's really hot outside, you've got some soft skin on those watermelons, and you get a bunch of rain at once, you're gonna have a bunch of split melons in your watermelon plot. So when those things get close to peak ripeness, they're like a water balloon that's at capacity. You add any more water to it and it's gonna burst. That's why you have to be really careful growing watermelons during the heat of summer. We try to get them in, you know, harvesting around July or so before it gets super, super hot down here, because they're just so fragile sitting out there with that soft skin, and anytime we get some heavy rains, we could lose a bunch of them. And then number 6 on our list, which are very similar to watermelons, Let's talk about pumpkins. So just like watermelons, pumpkins sitting out in the intense summer heat, it can really soften the skin on those. They can burst if you get a lot of rain at one time. But another issue I've seen a lot with pumpkins is that they will just crumble in the heat. They'll just deflate like you took the air out of a Mylar balloon. You'll come out here one day, they'll look great, come out here the next day, and they've gone completely flat. They've just melted in the sun. Now there are certain types of pumpkins that can take the heat better than others. I've found those jack-o'-lantern pumpkins don't like our heat at all. And we'll talk about one of those pumpkin varieties that can take the heat on our next video. And number 7 on our list, kind of the obvious one in my opinion, and we'll group a bunch together on this one here and just talk about brassicas in general. So a lot of your greens, your mustard greens, your collard greens aren't going to like the summer heat. They're going to look pretty terrible or either flower and go to seed once it gets really hot outside. Collards will usually hang around a little longer than some other greens, but even the collards I've had make it through the summer one time. They look really, really rough throughout the summer. It wasn't like we could eat anything off those plants. We were just seeing if they would survive. Now I have found that fall or winter planted greens seem to do a little bit better going into the summer than say spring planted greens, because those fall and winter planted greens get that nice slow acclimation, whereas if you plant some in the spring and it gets hot really quick, it kind of throws them for a loop. And another popular brassica that can really give you a lot of issues when it starts to get hot is broccoli. It can get seedy really, really fast. That means your harvest window is really, really narrow. Within just a day or two there, you can go from a beautiful broccoli head to a seedy broccoli head that's all crunchy and doesn't taste very good. So those are some things to look out for on 7 different veggies or groups of veggies as things get hotter, and that emphasizes the importance of getting stuff in, getting stuff planted early before the heat can take its toll on some of this stuff. And stay tuned for our next video where we'll talk about some veggies that really thrive in the heat, one of those being sweet potatoes. And if you want to see how to grow sweet potatoes in a raised bed or even a container, watch this video right here from a couple years ago. We'll show you a variety that does really well in small spaces and gave us a pretty dang good harvest. Check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.